So, here's the deal. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and the girl in question? She's 25. We dated for a solid couple of years back in high school, and, like a lot of young relationships, we had our ups and downs. She was this beautiful whirlwind, funny, unpredictable, magnetic in a way that made you want to stay tangled up in her chaos. But, like any good whirlwind, she eventually blew right through, leaving me in pieces and wondering what the hell just happened. We broke up, as these things go, and honestly, I didn't see it coming. One day, everything felt perfect, and the next, poof, she was gone. Just like that. No warning. No explanation. Like I'd never mattered at all. I spent months moping around, trying to piece myself back together, but eventually, life went on. I started working on my career, my own life, and for a while, it was like she never even existed. I convinced myself that the whole thing had been a lesson, and I was better off. But, of course, life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. It was a random Wednesday evening, and I was at home, just finishing a quick workout. Sweat dripping down my face, trying to focus on the next thing on my to-do list when my phone buzzed. It was a message on Facebook, a simple notification that stopped me dead in my tracks. "Hey, it's been a long time. I've been thinking about you. Can we talk?" I didn't even need to check the name. I knew who it was. Rachel. The ex. The one who had completely vanished from my life without so much as a trace. Her ghost had been haunting me for years. At first, I'd be lying if I said I didn't wonder if she ever thought about me. But over time, I pushed those thoughts aside. Life got busy. I started figuring out who I was without her, and honestly, I was kinda proud of how far I'd come. But now, here she was, out of nowhere. Thinking about me? Was she serious? Why now? After all this time? I didn't respond right away. I stared at my phone screen, wondering what the hell was going on. I could feel the familiar knot in my stomach tightening. How do you even react to something like that? Eventually, curiosity got the best of me. I opened her message, then typed a short reply, "Hey, what's up?" I didn't hear anything for about 30 minutes, and for some reason, that waiting felt even worse than if she'd replied immediately. What was she doing? I didn't know if I wanted her to answer or just leave me hanging forever. Finally, she responded, and when I saw the words, my heart dropped. "I missed you. I think about you sometimes. I want to see you again. I'm sorry for how everything ended." I had to reread the message at least 3 times before it sank in. What was I supposed to make of this? My mind raced through a million possibilities, each one more ridiculous than the last. Was she trying to win me back? Or was this some kind of game? Was she really apologizing, or was she just playing with my emotions? Now, look, I'm not the type to just roll over and let someone waltz back into my life after what happened. But there was something about that message that riled me, something that felt off. I had moved on, but had she? I knew I had to meet her. I had to see for myself if this was some sort of emotional manipulation or if, against all odds, she really did want to reconnect. I agreed to meet her, and we set the time for the following Saturday evening. Fast forward to the day of our meetup, and I won't lie, my heart was doing this weird skipping beat thing. I was excited, nervous, and, yeah, maybe even a little scared. Because let's be honest, seeing her again? It was like opening a door you thought was sealed shut for good. The moment I stepped out of my apartment, I felt like I was walking straight into a storm. I showed up at the cafe we agreed on, and there she was, sitting at a table near the window. She hadn't changed much, still as beautiful, still as stunning as I remembered. The same old Rachel. But now, there was something else in her eyes, something different. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I could tell something was off. She looked up when I walked in, and her face lit up with that familiar smile. The smile that had always been able to make me forget everything. She stood up, and we hugged. It was brief, awkward even, but there was a weird tension in the air, something unspoken hanging between us. "So," she said, sitting down, her voice soft, almost too gentle. "How have you been?" I could tell she was trying to be casual, but I could also see the nerves in her eyes. The way her hands fidgeted with her coffee cup, the way she kept glancing at me. But there was something else there too, something I couldn't shake. I didn't want to let my guard down too easily. And if I'm being honest, part of me was plotting. Because here's the thing, you don't just waltz back into my life after years of silence and expect me to believe it's all genuine. No, I had a plan. I wasn't just going to play along. Not this time. Alright, buckle up, because things are about to get a whole lot more complicated. So there we were, sitting across from each other in this little cafe, and I could feel the tension building with every passing second. She's got this soft smile on her face, but I can't ignore the fact that something's not adding up. She's acting like nothing ever happened, like it's all just water under the bridge. But here's the kicker, I'm not the same guy I was when we first broke up. Back then, I would have been wrapped around her finger the second she batted her eyelashes at me. But now, I've got this fire burning inside of me, this sense of clarity. I've learned a lot in the years since we split, and I'm not falling for her act, not again. "So, how's life been for you?" she asks, and I almost laugh. It's the classic let's pretend nothing's wrong move. She's fishing. I know it, and I'm not biting. "Good. Really good, actually," I reply, leaning back in my chair. I keep it short, cool, no details. I don't owe her any explanations. Rachel raises an eyebrow, clearly surprised by how chill I'm being. Normally, she'd have me eating out of the palm of her hand by now, but not today. "That's great. You always were a workaholic." She giggles, trying to lighten the mood, but there's an edge to it. The kind of laugh that feels forced, like she's trying too hard. But I let it slide. I don't need to rush into anything. I'm not here to hash out the past. I'm here for something bigger, something way more important. The conversation drifts for a while, nothing too deep. She talks about her life since we split, drops little breadcrumbs, trying to make me think she's been doing just as well as me. But I can tell. There's something missing in her voice. A certain unease. She's not as confident as she's pretending to be. Finally, she says it. The words I've been dreading and, deep down, expecting. "I've missed you, you know," she says softly, her gaze dropping to her cup. "I've thought about you a lot. And I really regret how things ended between us." I freeze. My stomach clenches. Part of me wants to believe her. Hell, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a sliver of hope buried deep down that maybe, just maybe, things could work out. But I know better than that. It's not about the regret. It's not about the missed you. It's about what she really wants, and I'm not here to play the fool again. I set my cup down, looking her straight in the eye. "Is that so?" I ask, my tone sharp. She looks taken aback by my sudden change in demeanor, but she doesn't back off. "Yeah," she says, her voice a little quieter now. "I've thought about what we had, and I've realized that I made a mistake. I was young. I didn't know what I had. But now I do." I chuckle, but there's no humor in it. "It's funny," I say, shaking my head. "You know, I always wondered if you ever thought about me. After all those years, I couldn't help but wonder if you ever regretted how you left things. But now, I get it. You were just waiting for the right moment to come back, huh?" Her eyes widen, a flash of guilt crossing her face before she quickly hides it. She's not used to me calling her out like this. She's used to me being the guy who's just happy to see her again, all ready to forgive and forget. But this time, I'm not falling for it. She starts, but I cut her off, my voice sharp now. No, Rachel. Don't even try to act like you weren't planning this. I lean in, my eyes never leaving hers. You don't just disappear for years, then show up like everything's fine. You don't just waltz back in and expect me to forgive you without even a real explanation. You think I'm that stupid? She goes silent for a moment, the weight of my words hanging in the air. But I can see the wheels turning in her head, and I know she's trying to think of something, anything, to make this right in my eyes. But it's too late. I've already made up my mind. I know you, I continue, my voice colder now, more controlled. I know how you operate. You get bored, you move on, then when you've got nothing else to keep you entertained, you come back, trying to rekindle something that was never meant to be. Her face reddens, and I can tell she's pissed. But I don't care. I'm not backing down now. Not after everything. I've got to be honest with you, Rachel, I say, leaning back in my chair again, crossing my arms. You may think you're the same girl who left me all those years ago. But I'm not the same guy anymore. And I'm not going to fall for whatever game you're playing this time. She stares at me, her expression hardening. But there's something in her eyes, something I hadn't seen before. Fear. I don't think she expected me to call her out like this. I don't think she was prepared for me to stand up for myself. For me to not just fall back into the role she thought I would. The air between us is thick with tension. The truth is, she's more rattled than she's letting on. She thought this would be easy. She thought she could waltz in and pick up where we left off. But she's not going to get away with it. Not this time. No, I'm finally starting to see through her act. And, in that moment, I realize, this whole meeting? It's not about closure. It's not about rekindling anything. It's about something bigger. Something more calculated. I lean forward, fixing her with a stare that she can't ignore. Now the real game begins. So, there we were, sitting across from each other at that damn cafe, and I could feel the tension between us like an electric charge. It was almost palpable, the way her eyes flickered nervously, the way she kept adjusting her hair as if she thought that somehow would make everything seem normal again. But there was no normal here. Not anymore. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me the way she did before. The old me? The one who would have been overjoyed just to see her face again? That guy was gone. No more playing nice. No more pretending. I had learned a lot in the years since we'd last spoken, and let's just say I'd made peace with the fact that some people, no matter how much you care about them, don't deserve a second chance. You really thought you could just show up and, what? Everything would be the same? I asked, leaning back in my chair. My voice was casual, but I could see her flinch. The mask was slipping. Rachel shifted in her seat, her eyes darting away, but I could tell she was trying to compose herself. She opened her mouth to say something but quickly closed it again, like she was debating her next words. The silence between us stretched, and I could practically hear the gears turning in her head as she tried to come up with some kind of excuse, some story that would make everything all right again. But I wasn't buying it. Not this time. I know you, Rachel, I continued, my words coming slow, deliberate. You don't just walk away from someone like me for no reason. And then, years later, show up like you've had some kind of epiphany. I'm not some fool you can manipulate into forgetting how you hurt me. Her face turned pale, and I could see her trying to regain control of the situation. But she didn't have the upper hand this time. I did. I'm not trying to manipulate you, she said softly, her voice almost pleading. I've changed. I've grown. I've learned so much about myself. I cut her off, my voice sharper now, the edges of my words cutting through the air. Don't give me that. I've heard it all before. The apologies. The I've changed speeches. If you've really changed, then why wait all this time to come back? Why now? She hesitated, her gaze flicking to the side as if she was searching for the right words. I could tell she wasn't expecting me to question her so directly, and it threw her off. I could see it in her eyes. She was starting to unravel. You don't get to do that to me, I said, lowering my voice so she could hear every word. You don't get to come back into my life after all this time and expect everything to be fine. It doesn't work that way. For a moment, Rachel didn't speak. She just sat there, her face unreadable, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I could see the walls she'd built around herself, the defensive posture, the mask of calm. But I wasn't done. I needed to see what she was really after. Let me ask you something, I said, leaning in slightly, my voice quiet but intense. What do you want, Rachel? What do you really want from me? Because you sure as hell didn't come back here just to apologize. She blinked rapidly, caught off guard by my directness. I could tell she was scrambling for a response, trying to come up with some convincing story to make everything seem reasonable. But the truth was, she had no idea what she was doing. She was out of her depth. I just want to make things right, she finally said, her voice shaky. I want to fix what we had. I never wanted to hurt you. You've always meant so much to me. I've always regretted how I left things. I didn't believe a word of it. Not anymore. There was something in her eyes, something behind the words, that made it all feel fake. Too rehearsed. Too convenient. You don't get to fix things, Rachel, I said, my voice low, controlled. You don't get to walk back into my life and expect me to forget everything. All the lies. All the broken promises. The way you left me in the dark, without so much as an explanation. That's not how this works. Her face flushed with anger, but I wasn't going to let her shift the narrative. Not this time. You don't know what it was like for me, she said, her voice rising a little. I had my reasons. I was dealing with my own stuff. I couldn't handle the pressure of us anymore. I was scared. I was scared of how deep we were getting. It wasn't easy for me either. I narrowed my eyes. This was the part where she tried to play the victim, where she tried to paint herself as the one who suffered too. But I wasn't buying that either. Scared? You left me without a word, Rachel, I said, my tone colder than before. You didn't even give me a chance to understand. You just cut me out of your life, and you expect me to sit here and feel sorry for you? She recoiled slightly, like I'd slapped her. But I wasn't done yet. You don't get to show up and expect me to fall for your sob story, I said, my voice hard now. I've spent years moving on, building myself up, and I'm not going to let you drag me back into your mess. Rachel opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off again, my patience running thin. You had your chance, I said, standing up from my chair. But you blew it. And now? Now you're going to see what it's like to be on the other side. Because I'm not the guy you left behind. I'm not that guy anymore. And you can't just waltz back in and expect me to forgive you. I turned to leave, but I could feel her eyes on me. For a second, I almost felt guilty, like maybe I'd gone too far. But then I remembered, this wasn't about me. It wasn't about us. It was about making sure that I was never that vulnerable again. And just before I stepped out the door, I heard her call after me. You don't even know what I'm really here for. I froze, my hand on the door. I didn't turn around. Not yet. Not until I knew exactly what was going on. I stopped at the door, my hand gripping the handle, but I didn't turn around. Her voice, laced with that damn uncertainty, kept echoing in my head. You don't even know what I'm really here for. It was a challenge, like a gauntlet thrown at my feet. I was halfway out the door, but something about it made me pause. Was this a last-ditch effort to keep me hanging on? Or was she really about to drop some bombshell I hadn't seen coming? The cafe was quiet, save for the clink of cups and the murmur of a few other patrons, oblivious to the mess unfolding at this table. But for me, the world seemed to hold its breath. What the hell was she really after? I turned back slowly, my feet dragging against the floor. She hadn't stood up, but she was watching me closely, those eyes flicking over my face like she was trying to read a book written in a language she didn't understand. I could tell she was fighting something, a battle inside her head, and whatever she was trying to hold back, it wasn't going to stay hidden for long. "All right," I said, my voice calm but with an edge. "What is it?" "What the hell do you want from me, Rachel?" "Because I'm done guessing. You've already had your chance to explain, and I'm not here to keep playing your games." She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but she didn't look away. For a second, I thought she was going to back down, maybe try to offer another excuse, another weak apology. But instead, she sat up straighter, and the air between us seemed to thicken. "I wasn't lying," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "I came back because I need your help." I froze. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. Help? This was what all this was about? After all these years? I couldn't help myself. I let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You need my help? After all this time, you think I'm just going to drop everything and be your knight in shining armor?" She didn't flinch at my tone. Instead, she nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving mine. "Yes," she said quietly, her voice cracking. "I know it sounds crazy, but I'm desperate, okay? I've made some really bad choices. And now I don't know who else to turn to." I crossed my arms, trying to hold my ground, trying to fight the flood of conflicting emotions that were threatening to overwhelm me. I wanted to yell at her, to walk out of the cafe without another word. But something inside me, maybe it was the old version of me that hadn't completely died yet, wanted to hear her out. "What kind of help?" I asked, my voice low, almost a whisper. "What could you possibly need from me?" Her eyes welled up with tears, and she blinked rapidly, as if trying to hold back the floodgates. "I'm in trouble," she admitted, the words coming out in a rush. "Real trouble. And I don't have anyone else to ask. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But I need you to trust me." I could see her fighting to hold it together. There was no doubt about it, this wasn't some kind of elaborate scheme. She wasn't playing me. But was it too late for me to care? Was there anything she could say now that would make it okay? I took a deep breath, feeling a knot forming in my chest. "You're telling me that after all this time, after everything you did, you want my help? And what? You expect me to just forgive you?" Her face crumpled. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve that. But I'm asking for your help. And that's all. I don't know what else to do." I stayed silent, chewing on her words, trying to figure out what was happening. I could see it in her face, she wasn't asking for pity. She wasn't asking for me to let her back in. She was asking for something real, something serious. But it didn't make any sense. Why now? After all the years of silence, why would she come crawling back when things were just getting good in my life? "You're asking me for help," I said slowly, "but it sounds like you've put yourself in this mess. You have no one else to turn to, and now I'm supposed to clean it up for you? That's not how this works, Rachel." "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking, the tears finally falling. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for the last bit of trust you might still have in me. Please." For a moment, I just stared at her, watching her fight to hold it together. It was hard. It was damn hard to look at her and feel nothing, to not want to just fold, to not want to believe that there was still something between us. But I had to be stronger than that. I had to be smarter than that. The truth was, I didn't owe her anything. And as much as I hated to admit it, part of me wanted to leave, to walk out and never look back. But then there was that other part, the part that was still tangled up in the past, the part that wanted to believe there was a chance, however slim, for redemption. I leaned in, my voice low, almost a growl. "What's the real story, Rachel?" I demanded. "Don't tell me you've been suffering all these years because of what happened between us. Tell me what's really going on." Her shoulders slumped as she let out a shaky breath. The mask finally cracked, and the raw truth spilled out of her. "I've made enemies, real enemies. People who, they'll hurt me if I don't fix things. I don't know who else to turn to. Please." I could feel the weight of her words, the desperation in them. But still, the question hung in the air, do I help her? The silence was deafening. My mind raced, but the answer, the choice, wasn't clear yet. I stared at her for a long time after that, her words still hanging in the air like thick smoke I couldn't shake. The desperation in her voice, the rawness of her plea, felt like a punch to the gut. Part of me wanted to reach across the table, take her hand, and tell her everything would be okay, like we could just rewind the clock and start over. But the other part of me, the part that had been burned by her so many times before, wanted to walk out and never look back. It was a weird feeling, sitting there, knowing I had the power to change everything. I could help her. I could fix her mess. But at what cost? And for what? To fall back into a cycle I'd already been through? To let myself get dragged into her chaos again? I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms, and let the silence settle between us. It wasn't uncomfortable, it was just necessary. I needed to think. I needed to decide. "You've really put me in a tough spot," I said slowly, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. "I'm not some knight in shining armor, Rachel. I'm not going to save you from whatever mess you've gotten yourself into." She nodded, her eyes filled with guilt and fear, but there was something else there, too. Something I hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Real vulnerability. The kind of vulnerability that made me hesitate, even just for a second. "I never asked you to save me," she whispered, voice cracking. "I just need help. And maybe you're right. Maybe I don't deserve it. But I'm here. I'm asking. God, I hated this. Hated feeling like I was being forced into a decision I didn't want to make. I hated seeing her like this, broken, scared. I hated that even after everything, there was still a part of me that cared. "So, what exactly is it that you need from me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on? Who are these people you're running from?" Her hands trembled as she wiped away a tear, her eyes focused on the table. "I got involved with the wrong people. I thought I could handle it. But I didn't know what I was getting into. They're dangerous. And now they want something from me. And if I don't give it to them, they'll hurt me. Or worse." I could feel the weight of her words sinking in. I could see it in her eyes. This wasn't some small problem she was facing. This was real. This was life or death. But still, the question lingered, was I the guy to help her? I rubbed the back of my neck, trying to get rid of the tension that had settled there. This wasn't what I had planned for today. I wasn't supposed to be dragged into her mess again. I wasn't supposed to be thinking about this, weighing the options in my head like I had any responsibility in her life anymore. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something. I couldn't just walk away. Not completely. Not when I knew the full story. "Okay," I said finally, my voice steady now, with just a hint of resolve. "I'll help you." Her eyes snapped up to meet mine, disbelief flickering across her face. "Wait, what?" "I'll help you," I repeated, leaning forward. "But this isn't going to be some fairy tale. I'm not going to sweep in and make everything better. I'm doing this because I don't want you dragging me into this mess again later. I'm helping you get out of this, but after that, we're done. No more second chances." She nodded slowly, her expression shifting from shock to something like relief. "I understand. I won't ask for anything else. I just need you now." It was a weird feeling, helping her. Part of me felt like I was making a mistake, like I was setting myself up for another round of disappointment. But another part of me, the part that had moved on from all the hurt, felt like this was the right thing to do. Not because I owed her anything, but because I could. I didn't know how things were going to play out. I didn't know if this would be the last time I saw her, or if somehow, this would open a door I didn't want to walk through again. But right then, at that moment, I knew I wasn't walking away. "Not yet. I'm not going to make it easy for you," I said, standing up from the table. "But we're going to figure this out. You get me out of your mess, and then we're done. No more back and forth, no more games. Understood?" Rachel didn't speak at first. She just looked at me, like she was trying to decide if she could really trust me. But after a moment, she nodded. "I get it," she said, her voice steady now. "I won't drag you into my life again. This is the last time." I gave her a sharp nod and turned to walk away. I wasn't feeling victorious. Hell, I wasn't even feeling good about the decision I just made. But I was feeling something I hadn't expected, peace. Maybe it was because I was finally taking control. Maybe it was because I wasn't letting her run my life anymore. I didn't look back as I walked out of that cafe. Because I knew that this was the end. The end of us. For good.